Okay, you've seen how I've used smart objects with adjustment layers and combining them and putting layers together. You're going to see a little bit more of that right now. So I have this image open and I'm going to go ahead, pull up my layers panel. And first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and grab hold of this part of the guitar. And I want to make it a little bit larger and I'm going to put it on its own layer. So I'm pressing Control J for jump to your own layer. And I'm pressing Control T. And of course, if you're on the Mac, press Command T. Making this a little larger, pressing OK. Now I'm pressing V to go to my Move tool. And what I want to do is create a fade that goes off to the side, but I also want a fade that goes across the bottom. The easiest way to fade one image into another, of course, is to use a layer mask. So I'm clicking on the mask, I'm taking my gradient tool, I am clicking and dragging. I can hold the Shift key down if I want to make sure it's a perfect straight line. Of course, remember, a really long gradient does a gradual transition, and a shorter one does a more definite transition. Now, I also want to fade out the bottom. And you can do this lots of ways. Some people go into Illustrator and create a custom mask, or right in Photoshop, or they change their blending mode and use the gradient tool right on the mask. And you can even just Alt or Option click to enter into the mask to paint your own custom mask. Now, I'm going back out to the image and I'm going to do something really simple. I'm right clicking and I'm converting this to a smart object. Now I can apply another mask. A second mask to the same layer. And so now I'll take the gradient tool and this time I will click and drag up and fade out of the bottom as well. I'll change the opacity of this a little bit. There we go. Now somebody's come to me and they said they want to brighten this up a little bit, or at least put a shadow for dimension behind the guitar player and the wall. So I'm going to select this layer. I'm holding down my Alt or Option key, dragging it down to the dog-eared document, and I'm choosing that this is the guitar player. Great. Okay, so now I'm using my quick selection tool and I'm going to click and drag just around his face. Now this does not have to be a perfect selection, and let me let you know where I'm going with this. I am going to be using this layer for a drop shadow only. And I will be taking this selection and fine-tuning it a little bit, but not spending a huge amount of time on it because you're really not going to see this selection. In fact, I'm going to go ahead up to Refine Edge, and I am going to maybe change the smoothness a little bit, make sure it's smoothed out, that it is feathered. Click OK. And now I'm going down to the layer styles and I'm adding a drop shadow. And you can see that, before I do that, let me go ahead and actually apply the mask. That would be a smart thing to do. So I've got my selection. I'm clicking on the Add Layer Mask. And now I'm going down to the drop shadow. Okay, I can drag this out. If I need to fine tune the shadow along the edges, I can actually go into my mask and fine tune it. I'm clicking OK. Now, what I have right now is actually the image with the shadow. And I don't really want the image, I just want the shadow. So notice how I can go up to fill and I can change the fill to 0 and my shadow is maintained. And if I turn the visibility back on to the background, you can see that I have a drop shadow. Now, continuing on with this, I've created this composite. I've got several layers, lots of things going on, and I want to apply one mask to all of them. So, take all of these smart objects, layer masks, layer styles. I right-click on all of them. I convert them all to a smart object. I make a selection because I want to create a little border effect. So I'm making a selection within the image. I'm now adding one layer mask to all of these layers. And then I am choosing that I want to apply a filter while I'm on the mask. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose Sketch Torn Edges. Now notice I'm not playing with torn edges on the actual image. I am experimenting with torn edges in here and choosing the right image balance and the edge effect that I want to create on the channel or the mask only. And when I click OK, you'll see that it applies that torn edge effect. And I can still even go back and add a drop shadow. Let me make sure I'm on my layer. Apply a drop shadow to even give it more dimension. But the really cool thing is, anytime I want, somebody looks at this, they say they want to make a change to it, I can double click and I can go back to the original images that created this file, even all the way back to that initial guitar that I scaled up. So let's say that in this case I want to go ahead and I'll just apply a hue saturation layer. I'll say go ahead, desaturate this, save it, close it, and you'll see that it gets applied all the way back through to my final image. So great things that you can do with Smart Object layers.